Welcome to the Ashen Forge. Diggs, keep doing that because as we come on air, people don't know what you're doing, and I want them to ask questions. I am Phantom X, of course, joined by Diggs, Legendary Neurotoxin, and Sog, and thank you for joining us. How's everybody doing?
Great. Doing good.
Yeah. We, since our last show, a couple of things. So we have the Noble Steed post, which was just made today, so looking at horses, animal husbandry. And also there was a toxicity post. So a few things to go over. And Diggs, I think you mentioned there's also, what was it, artisan, sort of a crafting, a little bit more information. So, yeah, Diggs, you're our sort of resident Ashes person. So I'm just going to, like always, where do you want to start?
I don't know. It's where you guys want to start. We can start with the horses, since that's the first thing you mentioned.
Do you like them or not?
I was thinking, so it's interesting because I was thinking you would be more interested in the animal husbandry aspect of that article than the horse aspect of the article.
I am, but there's something about the horses. I can't stop staring at them. I don't know.
Because they're smiling at you.
I feel like they are smiling at me.
Yeah.
I mean, does anyone have a dog?
Yeah, they have this, like, the smile from here, not necessarily the curved lip, but the, like, you know, you can tell that they're flexing, and that's where it looks like they're smiling, because these horses are flexing every muscle in their body.
Yeah.
When they're just relaxed, and at the same time you see all their ribs. Like I was just saying in our chat before, it's like they're like the bodybuilders of the horse world. But I don't want to be totally negative about that. They're pretty cool looking horses. Just they're like bodybuilder horses. I don't know. Is every horse horse in Ashes of Creation underfed and overworked?
In Ashes, all characters are heroes. So
It's an interesting question as it relates to animal husbandry, right? Because we're supposed to be able to go out and find different breeds, find rare qualities. So do they all look like this? Am I going to be able to come over a hill, see a glade full of fat horses?
So on that,
not horses. Those are not horse teeth. Those are not horse teeth at all. Those are like reptile jaw teeth. Those are not horse teeth. That's why it's so fucked up looking.
I don't know. It's just
that's exactly what it is.
Like, does anyone have a dog? Like, we have a dog, and occasionally I look at, I'm like, is that dog smiling at me? I can't tell. I feel like it is. It's a similar.
So you say you can find different horses. Like, look at these horses. What are the differences? They have the same exact.
One has spots and one is all black.
They have the same exact ears and the same positions. They have the same exact body shape. Maybe they get scaled up or down a little bit. Is it really just like what color you want them to be, or
the eighth image in that
set they have in the background?
The eighth image in that set really looks more like a dinosaur. If you the brown one in the sunlight, all the veins in its face and stuff, it looks more like a dinosaur. The reptile mouth.
I see it.
Yeah.
They do have a little reptile mouth.
Yeah, that's totally what it is. Because again, if you go back and look at their teeth, they ain't no horse teeth. Those are like reptile teeth.
I'll say the whole picture. I mean, the land looks beautiful. Like that. The environment looks amazing. But yeah, there's just something with the.
I don't know, like how much of that's actually just speed tree. Speed tree can make anything look pretty.
Yeah, but does that matter?
Yeah, no, actually, if you look at the one of all of them running towards the bottom, that is a really nice shot of the environment.
Mm-hmm. But back to the animal husbandry part. I mean, that's a good. Like, what actually are you trying? You know, what are you going to find that's different? And actually, the way they called it, it represents a gatherable resource. of sorts. Like what is that? I guess
because you can gather them, you can gather different kinds, and then you start breeding them for different skills, and they'll have different skills. Different species variants will have different powers and abilities.
I'm really curious about how we go about gathering them, but
lasso.
Well, why can't I just put a dart, make them go to sleep? No, I mean, is it like a mini game? Is it going to be, what exactly you're going to have to do to be able to get some animal to come with you across long areas? But
yeah, I'm guessing mini game now that you mention it. I hope it's a better mini game than Bless Online's, but.
So lesser known variants. So I guess we are talking more probably skins.
Powers and abilities, I think, more than skins.
So there's a whole underlying layer that's really just numbers that aren't apparent visually.
Because that makes sense.
What we see visually is, I mean, maybe as part of your animal husbandry skill tree, you have an appraise animal or whatever that pops you up with some sort of fun graph telling you how fast and how strong and whether or not it'll bite you, or whatever kind of magical power a horse has. I don't know.
I mean, it could be
a fantasy world. A horse could have any kind of magical power they want it to have. I don't.
Right. I mean, know. It could be different things like maximum size or like body length, width, that sort of thing. But all of these things, again, it could just be numbers. It could very well just be if it has, this set of attributes, give it these parameters. So if it has better handling around turns, maybe it's got a wider frame or something. Whatever it might be.
The appraisal thing makes sense because that's my immediate question. How do I know that this horse has more stamina than that horse? By looking at it.
Then instead of being able to have a horse in the world that people see and know that it's great, you have to be like, hey, my horse is a 195, 96, 45. And people are like, yeah, whoa, that's awesome. It's like, you play a card and it's the base horse, but you have like 35 plus 1 counters on it.
That's a funny way to look at it.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what it would be if it's all underlying, right? It's
you're going to want it to be underlying in any case, because we're going to be skinning these with all kinds of stuff.
So we know a little bit. A lot of this would be generational, right? Breeding, seeing what you get out of it. So in our other game we covered, we know a little bit as far as harvesting periods. Has that at all been discussed within Ashes? Sort of what the year cycle is, and sort of how everything else would fit into that for crops.
A year is 1 month. 1 month, 4 weeks is a year, I think.
Have they said sort of harvesting periods, or because I assume all this would tie into it?
I mean, the seasons are once a week, so whatever that means. I don't think they've drilled down into specifics of artisan shit, but
so for a couple weeks you have your nice 3-year-old thoroughbred, and then from that point on it's all downhill. That wasn't meant to be a negative. That would actually be really cool to me, that like you actually care about having your 3 or 4-year-old horse as your trained and ready to go, so that when you absolutely need your best animal for a circumstance, you're ready to go. Whenever you need to race your horse or use it in battle, whatever. I don't know if you want an older horse for that or not, but usually, racing is 3 and 4-year-olds, couple 5 and 6-year-olds, but horses can live for 15, 20 years. Just nobody lets them.
That'd be
Well,
good for an
apparently these are magical super horses, so they might be different.
Magical skinnable super horses. So if you wanted to be a rainbow pony, it could be a rainbow pony. If you want it to be what the Stufferkin, is that
Stufferton.
Stufferton? Yeah, you could. So when you look at these horses, just think that anytime you want, that horse could be a Stufferton.
I mean, I'm down for the whole breeding, figuring things out. It just comes down to life cycles, so which would be great for an economic perspective too. If you do have that whole, and in a month's time you're going to need something else new, which is one of the things I complain about as we start to cross into more reality, like life sim versus just a game. It's okay, you're trying to so accurately create seasons and years, yet we have some persistent elements that really should age with that time period that don't.
I mean, if you're going to do time dilation, own it. I'm working on likely going to be a D&D module where it's like the entire set of seasons goes in like just a few days because it's a kind of a sine wave shaped orbit. So it just, it gets the seasons every few days as it goes back up and down, regardless of where it's at kind of, positionally around the sun. So something like that, that's what I'm definitely planning to do, is just to own it, to make it that's how the plants grow. That's how the things grow. And that people have, similar life cycles to, normal analogs to where you'd see in the rest of the game world. It's just that the things that exist on that specific world are adapted to it and are able to, work with the seasons. Maybe they only last for half a day, and then they reseed, and then two and a half days later, they're basically back again. So, it's something that if you're going to do it, you gotta really own it, really know what you're going to do with it, and decide, what things do you want to have high amounts of time dilation, what things do you not. I would imagine with the horses, they're going to want to have it closer to the lifespan of a player character, or even half the lifespan of a player character, just so that way you can make your character get used to getting the horse on with it, and have that horse for most of the character's useful life. So obviously there's for something like this, that's not necessarily the concern. So you're just going to have horses that they just come and go every week. That's just going to be a burnable resource. That sucks.
I don't know. I think I disagree. I don't like for crafted or I mean, it's basically a crafted resource, right? It's a crafted tool in the game. I like there to be impermanence there, and I like there to be varying levels of quality, because it helps keep the economy going. It helps that you need to always maintain production and keep up stock, that you can actually have a real profession doing this. And if you're good at it and you have the right stock, that you're breeding horses with the stats that people prefer, whatever skin they slap on it later. And the same with a weapon. It's nice for me. I like decaying weapons. I like knowing that you need to get a new one.
Fair enough.
It doesn't always fit in the fantasy environment because people like to have that magical, everlasting relic item that with a special name.
I suppose it fits the model of the game. It's not supposed to be a game where you always have everything forever, like inconvenience and having to go out and get things, get more things, get better things, upgrade, whatever. I guess that is definitely something that they want you to do. They don't want you to be able to sit on the same piece of equipment the entire game, partially because they want you to get something better and upgrade, but partially also because, if it's something that's going to need constant replacement, that's going to take you time and resources investment. That engages the rest of the player economy, as well as making it that you can't go out and adventure or do whatever you're going to do as much because you got to wait on getting replacements or whatever, being able to afford replacements and spending time doing that, that whole grind. So,
but if you want to be if you want animal husbandry to be your thing in the game, and your thing that you want to be known for, there needs to be a constant demand for it. Otherwise, no one is known for it. Then there are just people who can do that. It's like, then it becomes the who has crafting level 8 so that they can make me this, and then you hand them the materials and they make it for you. You don't care who it is. But if maintaining that supply and having the skill level and having the quality of raw materials and all of that is what you do in the game, then people are coming back. Then if you're part of a larger organization, your role is to ensure that the cavalry has a supply of fresh horses, and you can't guarantee that they're going to live through the battle, and you don't know that, and you need to know that not every horse that's born is going to be trainable in the right way. It might not have the right stats, so then you have to have another outlet for, well, what is my other market for these horses? Because
glue.
Well, that's one option. Meat. I mean, we don't eat horse meat in the U.S., but eat horse meat a whole lot other places in the world.
I had it when I was in Russia.
I had a horse burger last time I was in Paris. It was pretty good.
Yeah, it was okay.
I mean,
it tastes like chicken. I think it tastes more like lamb.
It tastes like meat.
More like lamb than beef, but
yeah.
I mean, when you're trying to create I agree, Salk, that you're trying to create an environment where there's an actual profession where that's all you can do. There needs to be, I guess one thing that comes to mind, World of Warcraft, vanilla, where not everyone could do everything. I can, remember distinctly there would be one or two enchanters on the server that everyone knew and went for because they had the ability to do things other people couldn't. And that's sort of...
That was because they got lucky and had the recipe from a drop.
Well, but there's a lot of other to that. But as soon as, basically disenchanting items became an option for everyone, that sort of made notoriety become less. The other thing that comes to mind talking about permanence is, what is it? The Halloween events, the brooms that disappear after 3 days. I used to hate that. But that's in a sort of a different environment where you're not, you aren't creating the brooms, you aren't trying to sell them like mounts. So,
and it's also different in that in World of Warcraft, the game loop for a large number of players is acquire things and then acquire better things. So that's what the game is. The game is about completing a challenge for a chance of acquiring an upgrade, a better thing. But in an environment where things aren't permanent, you're thinking about, well, how do I have this battle coming up, or we're planning this attack, or the enemy is coming our way. I need to make sure that I have the supplies that I need to defend my territory or be part of this assault or defend this caravan or whatever, or attack this caravan, and that I know who I can go to after this if something goes wrong, and how I can replenish in the future, which creates a codependence or a mutual dependence from a lot of different professions. And not in World of Warcraft, you get something, whether somebody made it or you found it or it materialized out of the corpse of a bear or whatever it was, that's a permanent item, and then you're just looking for something better and hoping that you come across it. Now, in a situation where things aren't permanent and they have varying qualities, you're thinking about, maybe I do want to get better things as I'm growing, as I'm acquiring wealth, as I'm finding my place in the world. I want to get to the point where, I'm in a position where I can actually have the good stuff. But then it's about, how do I keep the good stuff? It's about, how do I make sure that I'm always ready, so that now that I'm I'm an able combatant. I'm fighting in the real battles, not, practicing against dummy. How do I make sure that I have a good sword, I have the armor that I need, and I have the horse that I need to continue doing this? And that's where expert crafters are very necessary, I think.
It's another interesting avenue for economy. So you grow attached to your horse. There's something about it that you like. Can you sort of trade that into a somebody who does animal husbandry and have them breed you? Basically the next child of that horse for you to use next. Like, is there a way to turn that into some sort of economy? Or if that would even be useful. I could see that might be a way for people to actually gain skill relatively, not easy, but people who are not necessarily explorers. Maybe, I'll give you some small coin for your horse. I'll breed it. In return, I'll give you whatever, one of the offspring. Mm-hmm. Which raises another question that I have, is sort of, because there will be you'll want to be known by what you breed. So let's say Diggs is an expert in this and creates some, amazing, crazy horse, and I go and buy it from him. Should I have the ability to then breed from that horse? Something that he's spent time creating and has created a horse with certain traits. When I go and purchase that from him, should I be allowed to in turn, go right back and start breeding that for myself?
I think what is likely to happen is that you are more likely to have to do hit or miss through breeding. So I don't think you'll still have the recipe for doing that without using that horse. But I would probably have a specific skill that I've obtained through racial progression or my specific node progression or social organization progression that I'm skilled at. I'm skilled at doing it. Whereas you have to breed in order to do it.
Maybe. I also think about it in terms of, if you get somebody else's good horse, what are the laws? Are you allowed to just breed horses willy-nilly? Do you need a license to breed horses? Is it heavily regulated? Or is it, just old backwood ranches or whatever, and it's not really controlled very much? And if you see one of your horses looking like it's being populated on someone else's ranch, you come over with a shotgun you come over with something and raise hell. I mean, is that what it's going to be? Is like, is there going to be that level of regulation? Is it going to be possible to have that level of regulation, or is it going to be just kind of like, you need the combination of the skills and the environment, the tools, and all of that, and like the horse appearances is most of what you're actually mixing around. The rest of the attributes are actually just coming from conditions and all that good stuff.
Horses are, it says in here, horses are a gatherable resource. We know that gatherable resources have varying qualities, and that they're used in crafting. I'm assuming that the crafting portion is the breeding. It feels weird to talk about it all in this kind of way, but like, if you have a top quality stud, it's like a reusable high quality resource. Is that? I'm just trying to apply what we know to what we're hearing. When they compare it to a gatherable resource, we know that there are different qualities of resources, and then resources are generally consumed in some way to craft better.
I don't know. Maybe the part that they're half reptile, the barred penis falls off and never grows back or something, so they can only breed once.
Geldings. Well, my guess to the previous question is that I think you would have to have all of the right. You would have to have all the right stuff in order to breed the horse. And if it's a specific type, part of that would probably require freehold and your node being at a certain stage. So if you notice that your style of horses is being bred because somebody's using one of your studs, then you siege the node and try to de-level their node and make sure that they aren't at a stage where they can make those type of horses.
The way I would see this working is not that, let's say you had you spent days and days and perfected a breed of horse that, I don't know, had white spots on its head. I don't know. And I bought that from you. Would not be that I then in turn breed it and immediately get the same level of quality, but somehow I breed it and I start to capture that, whatever made it unique. And then from there, continue to breed and you know, so not necessarily steal what you have, but sort of nudge my skills in that direction, basically.
I'm expecting it to be a matter of traits, and the traits that we want are probably not going to be so much about whether it has a white spot. I think it's going to be
comes down
about
to genetics. I was just trying to use a specific sort of.
But I'm saying
visual.
I think it's going to be more about speed and strength and whatever powers and abilities you have, and it might even be that, you know, that's. I'm guessing that, you know, we might.
Here's what's going to happen.
Speed dragons and horses.
Crafter's skill. You're actively involved in that breeding process, and it depends on how good you are at getting them to breed the right way.
Right. And
you
so
can envision that however you would like to envision it.
It's the combat portion.
No, that.
I think it's.
I think that's a real thing. That, like, if you are having two horses breed, that the quality of their offspring has something to do with your ability as a breeder, which could be. It sounds funny, but that's the model that we're presented for crafting, and and animal husbandry is presented as crafting.
Here's what I find interesting in this game and the other that we talk about when you start introducing the concept of breeding and pulling in traits and things like mimicking genetics, is that in the real world, as we are now, you know, our lifetimes, our generations are so long that we still go out in the world and there are still areas that talk differently, look differently, whatever. The natural, over time, as we get, we're able to interact more, travel more easily over time. My opinion or my thought on this is that those very highly unique things that over thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years eventually start to sort of mesh into one overall combination, right? We won't ever see that in our lifetime because that happens over literally thousands of generations. In a game environment where we're talking in a year is in a month, you know, if we're able to take someone else's horse and breed from it, is that you've accelerated that process so much as do we end up with an economy where basically everyone breeds the same horse. You've run out of traits to sort of try to pick up on. You're shaking your head, but that's a real possibility.
I think it's not, because
I'm just imagining that somebody really is spending all of their time actively trying to have horses breed. That they're just like, how much breeding can a horse do? Like, there has to be a limitation on that, right?
Well, but you're capturing traits, so you're basically eventually making it into one genetic variant.
You're not, because it's not going to be based on natural selection, and it's not going to be limit. It's going to all be, you know.
No, it's going to be based on economy, which makes it even worse.
It's going to be based on the breeder's skill.
It's going to be more akin to armor smithing and weapon smithing, and people are going to be breeding for those traits, especially ones that they can use in combat, and that's going to be ice or fire or whatever.
But
extra
there are only
powers
so
and
many
stuff.
traits you're going to be able to introduce, and over time,
there's no because there's only so many traits. So there's going to be people who want to do ice horses. There's going to be people who want to do fire horses.
When did we start talking about ice horses and fire horses?
Powers, because there's powers. That's what people are going to
If
be.
I run into a battlefield
abilities they have.
and a horse shoots ice out of its ass at me, I'm pretty much done playing that game.
It's
Yeah,
not
I
even
could
going to be
see
shaped
that.
like a horse. It's going to have a different skin on it.
It's gonna be a Stufferton shooting ice.
That's right.
The I don't know. The thing about it is, I think of what is it, potion making from the Elder Scrolls series. You mix some components, you get a cool potion. You mix more of them, great, you get a better version. You mix some and a little of this other thing, great. It just explodes when you drink it. You just kill yourself. So extrapolating that to the way genetic diversity might work, there could be 1, 2, 3, 4 generations back, different layers of like pluses and minuses that are jumping around. That it could just be that you had a good stock and a good stock, and you mix them together, and it's like this is the one that you're betting everything on, and it's crap. And it turns out everything that both of those horses are going to generate is crap because they have so much crap built up. You got the best of the batch a bunch of times, and then it's like, well, now everything's going to reset on you. Yeah, I could definitely see them having something like that. That there's limitations to how much you can push things in one way or another. Or then the other is the what that negative modifier could be is also just inbreeding, and the more layers of like inbreeding and how closely they are inbred to another one will be part of the problem with like oh geez, all of the horses in this nation are like starting to turn out real funky. Well, it turns out because they're all like breeding from the same 4 horses, just like in real life, they're all fairly inbred. It's kind of disgusting.
I think you might be going a little deeper than we need to go here. I don't think there's any like genetics involved. Like I think that like a horse that you go lasso or trap and break is a raw resource.
Fair enough.
Think about, and it has the same quality level as a ore, right? Raw resources have a quality level. And what if crafting in this sense is training? So that crafting is you convert this raw resource into a war horse, or you convert this horse into a cart horse, or you convert this into a racing horse or whatever, in which it's no longer a raw resource, it's a finished product. So
Trainers
you can breed raw resources in ways that you can generate more out of them, or maybe,
maybe.
I'm
We'll
speculating,
see.
but
We'll
I'm
see.
thinking it's less likely that there's a deep genetics plan in the background than
Yeah.
Well,
I
that's
know.
that's
mirroring,
not what I'm saying.
mirroring the crafting system that is already in place. So there's a resource quality, and then there's a finished product quality as the result of the resource quality.
Well, again, we know there's powers and abilities associated. That's what a lot of people are going to be going for. I think people are going to be going for stats like speed, strength, stamina, and I think lots of that stuff is going to be tied to racial progression as well. I think the recipes that you get for that is going to be tied to your race, your religion, your node, the region that you live in. And those are going to be part of the traits and part of the traits that animal husbandry artisans have. But I think that might be on the crafter side. So one question is, which what do they call it? Which parent path does it fall under? Which parent path is animal husbandry under? That's probably crafting.
Yeah, I'd imagine.
And
so.
then trainer is probably processing.
That would make sense then.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a whole different thing, like how you train that. Like one is getting the traits that you want in, another is, like physical traits, and then the other is like training. That's a whole different quality process, which is kind of Interesting. And then we would have to see, is hunter under gatherer when it comes to the animal aspect of it? Maybe it's not even the animal husbandry artisans that are doing the gathering part. So,
Yeah, who knows?
I think that that's the right train of thought, that it does fit into this pattern that we have for gathering, crafting, processing, and that horses and what you can do with a horse mirrors what you can do with ore. At least at the highest level.
I just need to know more about how they're going to do this.
Of course.
How they implement it.
Yeah, we all want to know.
If it is a percentage, when we are born, we get a percentage of our traits from our mother, a percentage from the father. So I'm not saying they're going to go into like genetics and here's the DNA that we're using, but depending on how they implement that, if it's you bred this horse with this horse, now you have 13% increased stamina. There needs to be some sort of check to that to not let it run away, especially because there's presumably there'll be such short cycles for doing this. So.
Right. We also have to say, I wanted to mention what Zog was talking about. We do also have to figure out if there's a limit to how many times we can breed one animal.
Shouldn't be.
But there might be. I mean, especially, I don't know. Isn't there
a mare can't be pregnant twice at the same time.
Well, it depends on, I guess, who you're trying to get the trait from. So.
Yeah. And then what was I was going to lead that into what we learned about artisans. We got some clarity. I think it started in Discord that from Steven, you can only be a master of one parent path, and that by default inherently means that you can only have you can only master professions within that parent path. You cannot be a master of any professions in another parent path. And you actually get the mastery artisan title before you are able to master professions within that parent path. And we should have known that because in the Scientific Node article, it says that you earn mastery for the artisanship at stage 5 of a scientific node, and mastery of professions at stage 6 of a scientific node. So that's going to be another limiting factor that I'm wondering about when you're saying, if you see somebody breeding your style of horse in another node, maybe you de-level that node and they don't even have access at that point to making that level of horse anymore.
And who knows when you're at that crafting or processing stage, what other things you'll need from other professions if you want it to be a fire-breathing horse, or you want it to be a horse that with a ground pound like earthquake ability or something like that. That what kinds of help from other people or other raw materials you might need to combine with just the horse, because I don't know, it's a pretty big assumption on my part, but as I think through it, that animal husbandry is about having the best quality raw material, not necessarily, which then move on to these people that want fire breathing Stuffertons.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that if they did more than that level, that it kind of conflicts with the idea of being able to skin everything, because if you want to take it to the next level, you want to have physical appearances involved. You want there to be an apparent meaning to that. Like, kind of the downside of skins in general is that you lose some of the, hey, look at this special thing that I have. Everybody can see this special thing that I have, but that's the path, right? That's how the game is going to work.
But yeah, you might have a fire-breathing ice horse. Fire-breathing horse
that's,
with
actually, I'm glad you said that, because I was just starting to wonder again with these checks and to make sure things just don't run away into everything being combined into one horse. Is I wonder if they would do something like, okay, you've bred this ice ability, you've locked yourself out of any type of fire ability, or sense. You have to go through some process of backtracking the whole way through. Mm-hmm. I mean, that'd be one easy way to make sure you couldn't just combine everything.
Maybe if you don't have a high enough quality horse, it just doesn't survive the process of giving it the ice power. Mm-hmm. Well, we got a frozen lump of dead horse.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
that's another interesting thing that reminds me of what Neuro was saying, because Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning had a similar process with the apothecary, and you could breed. You could like go through and make your potions. Okay, I got this resource from this type of plant and from this type of plant. Combine them, alchemy, I guess it was, and come up with different types of potions. And you'd have to test them out. And sometimes they'd go poof. Sometimes they'd give you a weird, like explode. Sometimes you'd get a weird reaction, and sometimes they'd do a very specific thing. And that could be interesting with horses too, right? Like sometimes the horse dies. Sometimes you get a unique power that you weren't expecting, and sometimes it's just a regular horse. Or sometimes it's just a mule. Who knows?
That wasn't actually a horse. That was donkey quality. You got a mule.
Mm-hmm.
This is sort of a good transition into toxicity, which is sort of our last topic. You shook your head.
I didn't see the transition, but go for it.
Well, in my head, how often do you feel like the PvP community is also the crafting PvE community? Like that player base, how often are they one and the same? They interact, right? They have to, but
every logistically successful PvP guild has a very strong crafting contingent. Mm-hmm. And in Ashes of Creation, there's no difference. Like you're part of an effort, whether you're swinging a sword on the front line or whether you're researching in the science node, that everything is getting fed back into caravans and castle sieges in one way or another. You're all part of the same effort. So I don't know that it's different.
Yeah, when I played Wizard 101, I was the Charles Darwin of that game, and I broke the code for how to successfully and consistently breed the traits that you wanted in your pets. And one of the elite PvP groups adopted me because I was able to get them the most powerful pets easily and consistently. And they taught me how to actually play at power PvP level combat, and power leveled me through a bunch of it. But they were like, no, now that you've cracked this, we're going to start breeding the pets that we want. And, they were very much into that aspect of it because it helped them with PvP. So I would expect the same thing. If they can get pets or mounts that are going to increase their ability at PvP, they're going to craft that stuff as well.
They will spend 90% of their time crafting if that means that when they're spending their 10% of the time PvPing, they are more successful at it.
Yeah, because that's one of the things is I think about raid mentality and WoW. If you go in with just enough resources to barely limp through, it's going to be painful. If you come in with overwhelming resources and just like mash through everything as quickly and hard as you possibly can, you're going to get through it with a lot less waste in the end. You can get through it a lot faster. So the same thing applies to PvP. If you have, you know, a 10% advantage over the opponents because you've done everything you possibly can, every buff, every, you know, you've taken a nap before the battle, you've got your pets all, you know, rested up, you give them their treats and your pets and the snuggles, you know, whatever, you practice your spells before you cast them, everything that it would take to give you the most advantage. Then when you go into that siege, you just wreck the opponents because they weren't ready for it, because they weren't even halfway at their 100%.
Or you just outlasted them because you had enough arrows. And
yeah, exactly.
You know, like, it's going to be, resource management is going to be more important than combat skill initially, at least, you know, until some groups maybe have such a huge backlog of resources that, you know, battles aren't even lasting long enough that they come into play. But I think that'll be way down the line, that building up your nodes to get access to the skills you need and the crafting abilities that you need, having the right resources, having the right people gathering, crafting, and processing, so that when it comes time for a battle, you're more prepared than the opponent is going to be. I think that's the whole game loop, right? It's ensure that it's do all of the preparation things, have the battle, assess losses, and plan to recuperate and get ready for the next one. Not enter the queue for next PvP instance. You know?
Diggs, when you joined that guild, did you PvP?
No.
Yeah. How often does a PvPer spend 10% of their time in a game PvPing? That's a serious question.
You know,
because my guess would be not many. They would quit playing.
It depends on what they need.
It depends on the kind of game, because if it's something, I think of instances in WoW as being a very arcade-like experience versus, you know, a full-out like war of attrition where things are actually on the line. It's a completely different sort of battle.
Completely different game. I don't think you can
compare the two. And so to that extent, I would say, if you're playing WoW and you want to PvP, yeah, you can spend 100% of your time PvPing, sure. But
in EVE, you spend 1% of your time PvPing because you take years building up your ship and your resources to even be ready to enter the battle, and then you may not last through it, but you have another account that you're currently going through all of that grind process with.
Because here's why I don't think you can compare World of Warcraft, because the PvPer in World of Warcraft can master professions. Everyone can. It's easy.
No, nobody can master a profession because there's no such thing as mastering.
They can get to the top. That's my point.
It's just you get the ability to do.
And that's why I don't think we can compare World of Warcraft to Ashes or Illyria, because
no, we can't.
Because the systems themselves are different. A PvPer I don't think that is going to have the time or want to spend the time to master crafting. The reason I'm pointing this out is because then you're going to have PvEers come in to do that for you. And that ties back into the toxicity question, because the very first, I read this before we went on, the very first comment on that is basically saying, moderator, you shouldn't get in trouble for shit talking, because that's going to be the core driving part of the game. And I think that is an entirely wrong view, because you're going to need this contingency of people to be making the world go round in a non-PvP fashion.
It's a PvP world.
in
That
It's
is
a
the-
PBX world. It's a
That is
PBX world.
that is
Yeah.
the vision. That is not the reality.
in the context of PvP, basically the way I think about it, if you're spending time shit talking, you're not PvPing. So
And I still follow a lot of landmark people, EQ next people,
Yeah.
and very frequently they're sort of like, well, why do I want to play Ashes? I mean, it's PvP, and that's the kind of people though that you're going to want to be in there doing all the, spending the hours crafting that it's going to take to master things, because it's not a World of Warcraft. I have 50,000 gold. I can I can craft the top item because in 2 hours. That's not how it will work.
I think it's different though. I don't think it's that you go. Well, you're gonna have to have a variety of people, and you're gonna have to have specialized people. There are specialized warriors you are going to have because you can only learn so much. You can only get good at so much, right? But the game is not a go in and queue to hack and slash. The game is about preparing for a siege, executing a siege, preparing to guard a caravan, guarding the caravan, preparing to assault a caravan, assaulting the caravan. That there's this additional stage of planning and this additional stage of
That I don't think the
gameplay that-
PvPers will do.
Well, so there's a few,
then they're just going to be dead.
They'll be part
there's
of a
few
guild,
things.
though. Hopefully, we'll have people doing it for them.
Well, there's a few things. So, right, there are death penalties, so that you'll have XP debt. You're going to have stat loss, and a variety of things that are going to affect your ability in combat, your combat ability when you return from death. So they aren't going to just be able to, keep respawning and jumping back in, jumping back in, jumping back in. I did see a thread a while ago that was asking how much prep time should there be for a siege or for a raid. And people were saying quite a bit of time, like hours of time. And part of that is, some of that will be crafting the gear that you want. Some of that will be helping crafters get the gear, craft the gear that you want. Gathering stuff for them to do that. So it's not just going to be people PvPing constantly. They aren't going to be able to spend 100% of their time in PvP. They're going to have to prep for a lot of it.
But what is that? How are we linking this back to toxicity? Like PvPing is
Because
just
of the post I
PvPing.
read, because that's associated more with that.
Because of the taunting or
Because I don't think people who traditionally go for MMOs and PvE will put up with that nearly as much as PvPers will, because it's just two different realms. There's and I'm not saying there shouldn't be PvP. I mean, that's part of what drove me to this, is the idea of story changing through conflict. I mean, that's my point, though, is there was not a lot that I agreed with Dave G. But EQ Next is a similar mindset of conflict driving change. And one thing that he would always say that I did agree with was that the glue to the worlds were the crafters, the people, the crafters, and the type of player that did events and put things together. So my point in all this is I'd hope there's not an environment set up where it's just trash talking and doing whatever, because you're going to exclude a
Is
significant...
that what toxicity is, though? I don't know.
Right, so it can be, right? It could be a whole bunch of stuff. But one reason why I don't think trash talking is going to be an issue, I don't understand why trash talking would be an issue, is because the four of us don't pay attention, as far as I know, a lot to what people are saying in chat. Like, we're
because
usually
they just relentlessly trash talk, and there's no more.
I know, but
No, I don't
Like
actively
Planetside too.
avoid.
If I want to look at chat, it's just a bunch of people being assholes in chat to each other. But that's why I don't.
But
look
I also
at
don't
chat
think
like that,
I've
too.
said this many times before. I don't think we're the average person who plays. Us as a group is not a representation of the. I mean, we've done a weekly show for like almost 5 years. We're a different type.
But I don't think toxicity is talking shit to opponents, right? I think toxicity is yelling at your own teammates because they're trash and should uninstall the game. You know, I think that's toxic, like that, like breaking of the team mentality. Like, I think that's
we don't even have the time to get in the full
Yeah, that's
discussion
probably
about
another talk.
toxicity. I gotta say, because
I guess it is not.
there's whole things. Just gonna give you a preview of one of the subjects that I would be getting into. Combat arms in its early days was such a brutally toxic community. Like, everybody was just at each other's throats, and there was little moderation, and their anti-cheat stuff was just absolute garbage. What formed out of it was the community ban list, which was people would form a list of people that they thought were suspected cheaters. That person would get investigated. That is, they would have TeamViewer running while they were playing Combat Arms windowed with their task manager running, and somebody would basically look at that and assess whether or not they've got cheats running or something. And that's just ridiculous that any community should have to come to that. And so between that and, Brass giving the talk about, people who are toxic versus people who are trolls, that the trolls, and this is towards a company, the people that are trolls towards a company want better for it. They're just, they don't really have a good direct way. They don't feel like they're being heard, trying to do it in a roundabout way, etc. Versus people who are genuinely toxic are just there slinging in mud and making things worse for everybody. But that's I guess relations of community towards the company. On that subject, though, I feel like that is one of the big things, that it's really bogus that a company that a community should resort to trolling to begin with. That a company isn't open enough to at least receive the feedback and acknowledge it from the community. And even if you do, that doesn't mean that there aren't going to be trolls and there aren't going to be people, writing about this and that. I look at Digital Extremes with Warframe. They do a great job acknowledging their community. There's still a lot of things that everybody would like them to take care of. They know they would like to take care of them too, but there's a queue of things. They've got demands. They've got, investor backing that has demand. So they've got things they got to do too. Doesn't mean that they don't want to do this stuff. That doesn't mean they don't still have trolls. There aren't people that, clearly plenty of toxic people are going to be there. It's with 38 million people playing it. So of course there's going to be a bunch of shitheads playing it. That's going to happen with any community that size, but they mitigate it. They deal with it. They do what they need to. There's a little bit of stuff with their partner program, apparently, that they still need to assess and work out. But otherwise, I mean, that's an example of a company that at least tries to do their very best to handle the toxic stuff and handle the players being jerks. And it works. They do insta ban certain phrases in chat, for example. It's nice to not ever have to see those phrases. So it's definitely a responsibility of the game company. And if anybody ever says that's violation of freedom of speech, first of all, not every company is in America. Second of all, private companies are excluded from freedom of speech. It's not public, it's private. They actually have a duty to moderate it, because if someone starts posting like child pornography or something and they don't moderate it, then they're complicit. So you have to moderate in the modern era.
Yeah, you have to moderate. Like, if your game becomes a communication network for local terrorists, that's your own fault, right? Like, that the law now says that's your own fault, that you should have stopped it. That it's the game's responsibility. It's also the game's responsibility to interactions in their game should not drive players to kill themselves. Like things that we've seen like very rarely in the past, of people that they're bullied so bad in a game, or just like people that are bullied so bad in real life that they're like unstable, or really struggling. That's not okay. It should not. They need to make sure that they aren't promoting a harmful place to individuals or large or systematically harmful.
I guess where I was going with this is that they're creating a game where they're going to have both, significant portions of both a traditional PvP community and a traditional PvE community. I do think that, as you say, there are different definitions for toxicity. People view it differently. And I do think there's that those, in general terms, those two different communities view it differently. And that they just have to be very, I think, careful at how they merge the two, because you are going to need the two to make the world function as they're supposed to. I only bring that up just because that on this developer discussion, you can kind of clearly tell who's more of a traditional PvP player as you scroll down through it based off their response. And if the overwhelming, it's just the community itself, I think, needs to be aware of kind of what they're going to need in order to have this world that everyone wants to exist, and try to go about it in a way that allows that to happen. So that being said, this maybe could be a whole different topic another time. I guess we'll see what comes up in 2 weeks, what's left to talk about. If there's nothing groundbreaking, this might be revisited. So we are over our time.
I'll give you one more quickie real fast, because this one is kind of public record, and I've talked about it in a previous episode. They had one of the previous community managers from Daybreak, and she was on for a bit, and then she left. And she explained to me, so I wanted to make it a nice, nurturing, caring community where people can work together and be friendly and stuff. And I was told not to do that, and I can't do that in good conscience. So she left, moved over to Tryon. So, things moved over at Tryon since then. They folded. So
then I think the person who's driving the vision has to look at themselves and just take a step back and see what they're trying to create, and if they're doing it, the best way of doing that.
So good luck to the folks in charge of community right now.
I would say the exact same thing in Illyria. You're developing a grand crafting scenario where you can live in the world and just be a crafter. You have to figure out how to merge that with the people who want to live in the world to just combat and PvP. And I think that can be a very delicate balance. So. All right, we will be back in 1 week with our Illyria show, hopefully going over DSS. We'll see. I can at least say the words DSS. That's not in any kind of NDA. Okay. All right, everyone have a good weekend, and thanks for watching. We'll see you in a week.
Okay.
Bye.
See you later.